Back everyone to the Wedge 52 Gridiron Podcast. I'm your host, Wedge. Today's episode will be the Ravens Week 10 recap, as well as a Week 11 preview. The Baltimore Ravens, after a very disappointing and kind of out of nowhere loss to the Cleveland Browns this week, have a quick turnaround before another divisional matchup on Thursday Night Football at home against Cincinnati Bengals. Before we jump in today, please make sure you press that follow button right here on Spotify, as well as check out the Instagram at Wedge52Gridiron and share this podcast with your fellow NFL and Baltimore Ravens fans. Help me grow and continue the Wedge52 Gridiron podcast. With all that being said, let's jump into today's episode. The Ravens, like I said, lost to the Cleveland Browns 31-33. Kind of why I hinted at came out of nowhere, not because the Browns were an incapable opponent, but because the Baltimore Ravens were winning the entire game, literally trailed by 0 seconds of clock time during that game. The Cleveland Browns outscored the Ravens 16-0 in the final 9 minutes and 4 seconds of Sunday's loss to the Cleveland Browns. Very disappointing one, like I said. Came quick. Browns scored a touchdown. I believe that was the Elijah Moore touchdown with 9:04 left on the clock. Next possession, batted pass, batted Lamar Jackson pass. That was pick six. And then, Ravens couldn't do much on offense. Next possession and two, back and forth. And then the Cleveland Browns ended up winning it on a game-winning field goal that they snapped on 4 seconds, went through the uprights, no time remaining. For the Ravens, lost 33-31. Definitely a disappointing one, especially in terms of the divisional race. The Ravens still, hold control of the division. It still runs through them. I'll talk more on that a little bit later here. But this week's Offensive Player of the Week, Zay Flowers gets it. 5 catches for 73 yards. A couple of other players maybe could have gotten it. Not really a spectacular offensive performance by any individual. The Ravens did score 31 points, 24 of those offensively. But not really any standouts on offense. On defense, though, the other hand, a couple of good candidates. This week's Defensive Player of the Week for the Baltimore Ravens is Kyle Hamilton. Had 8 tackles as well as a nice pick six that he jumped a quick slant route or quick one-step drop pass from Deshaun Watson, batted it into the backfield himself, as well as tracked it down and returned it to open up the game for that Baltimore Ravens defense. Definitely, gave the Ravens some mojo, some momentum heading into that game early, as well as, getting M&T Bank lively, getting the fans into the game in what, we're all expecting, I'm sure, to be a strong defensive battle. Actually turned into a little bit of a, high-scoring game, 64 points combined out of the two offenses there. But the Kyle Hamilton really sparked, that Ravens, who, like I said, were in control most of the game until the final, 9 minutes. So that's why Kyle Hamilton gets Defensive Player of the Week. A couple of other offensive, stats here. Lamar Jackson went 13 for 23, 223 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Like I said, the one was batted straight up in the air. But 2 of those on the day, as well as 8 rushes for 41 yards. Gus the Bus had 11 carries for 24 yards, and yet another rushing touchdown. That's got to be his at least 6th on the season, potentially 7. Don't remember off the top of my head. And then Keaton Mitchell, interesting situation, had 3 carries for 34 yards and a touchdown on the day, as well as 1 reception for 32 yards. But for whatever reason, Keaton Mitchell did not hardly appear to get any snaps or touches in that second half of the ballgame. Definitely an interesting choice by that coaching staff as to why, why he was, steered away from kind of in that second half after averaging 11.1 yards per carry. in his first 3 touches with the touchdown as well. Keaton Mitchell has shown a lot of explosiveness. Obviously, last week he had 17 carries, something like that, 179 yards, I think, and the touchdown. Keaton Mitchell is showing a lot of promise from a young back. Yes, Gus Edwards is very good. Justice Hill is solid as a dual threat back, but definitely think that Gus Edwards and Keaton Mitchell should be the 1-2 punch primarily, So definitely interesting to see, Keaton Mitchell, I think, when he's in, he's playing well so far. Would like to see him, get involved more, especially in the second half. Harbaugh kind of alluded to the question of if it was game plan or something else. But I think Keaton Mitchell needs to be involved. He's been playing solid, a very explosive, shifty guy out of the backfield, which, is very complimentary to Gus Edwards, kind of a little bit more of the physical, bigger side of a running back. But Gus Edwards also very efficient still normally in terms of yards per carry. Does see the field pretty well. So moving on to a couple of receiving stats. Odell Beckham had 1 catch for a 40-yard touchdown. Took a slant to the house like old school Odell. It was good to see. And then Mark Andrews had 2 catches for 44 yards on the day for him. And then a couple of nice defensive performances. Roquan Smith finished the day with 21 total tackles. Absolutely incredible by him, continuing to be that leader and, strong captain, so to speak, of that defense. And then Patrick Queen had 9 tackles as well. Jadeveon Clowney had himself a very solid day, 6 tackles and 2 sacks. And then Justin Madubuike had 3 tackles and 1 sack credited to him. That Browns offense, though, had 373 total yards and, was successful on 8 out of 16 third down attempts, which is definitely uncharacteristic by the Ravens defense. Definitely ended up hurting them, as the game went on, especially that second half, that fourth quarter, where we just could not seem to get a stop. 8 out of 16, that's 50%. But heading into this week, the Browns offense was 31st on third down percentage. Success rates, I want to say they're heading into this week, their offense was, right around 30%, 32% success rate on third down. And that Ravens defense was ranked 7th in, stopping that offense. And not on Sunday. They did not perform to their season par down the stretch. So that was unfortunate to see. Definitely led to, the loss towards the end of the game. That final touchdown to Elijah Moore. Obviously, the pick 6 isn't on the defense. And then, not being able to get the stop and getting the Browns and Dustin Hopkins, who had a busy day, into field goal range. For the Browns, a couple of numbers. Watson went 20 for 34, 213 yards, a touchdown, and that pick. 8 for 37 on the ground. Jerome Ford had 17 carries for 107 yards, while running back Kareem Hunt had 10 carries for 32 yards and a touchdown on the day. And then on the receiving end, Amari Cooper, 6 catches for 98 yards. David Njoku, 6 catches for 58 yards. And Elijah Moore, 5 catches for 44 yards and a touchdown. And then that defense as a whole had the 3 sacks. 3 sacks on the day, and then those 2 interceptions off of Lamar Jackson. That's kind of enough about that disappointing loss there. Moving into, the next opponent, the Bengals. We play them on Thursday Night Football this upcoming week here. They lost to the Texans in Week 10, 30-27. Kind of a shocker there. Bengals were on a hot streak, the same as the Ravens, and then they lost one now. I think it's kind of funny. All 4 teams in the NFL or AFC North have been 4-1 in their last 5 games. Kind of interesting. It doesn't really, just kind of goes to show that how close the AFC North race is, which, again, I'll talk about more in a second here. Burrow on the day in the loss to the Houston Texans, 347 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Joe Mixon had 11 carries for 46 yards and a touchdown. And wide receiver Jamar Chase had 5 catches for 124 yards and a touchdown. He's definitely been ramped up, been a different player since the Baltimore Ravens played them in week 2. Bengals defense, however, allowed 544 yards, had just 1 sack, did get an interception and 2 fumble recoveries, though. A couple of notables, a lot of high number, production, high yards produced by certain individuals. C.J. Stroud, 356 passing yards. Devin Singletary, 150 rushing yards allowed on the ground. And wide receiver Noah Brown had 172 receiving yards for the Texans. So definitely something that I thought was noteworthy. Stroud with the 356, that one's not, as eye-popping, but allowing a 150-plus yard rusher and 170-plus yard receiver in the same game kind of goes to show how much that Bengals defense has been struggling throughout this season. I'll dive more into that. But as we look ahead to the Ravens versus Bengals Thursday night football game, the AFC North standings as they sit right now, the Ravens are still at the top, like I said. It's still going to run through us. The Ravens still have control at 7-3. The Steelers are in second. Browns are in third. They are both 6-3 on the year. And then the Bengals are currently sitting at fourth in the division at 5-4. This upcoming matchup, obviously very important for the Baltimore Ravens and their divisional race. If they can win this one, they'll essentially eliminate Cincinnati Bengals from the division chances here, as they are already sitting at 0-2 in the division, and would fall to 0-3 if they lose this one, which would essentially eliminate them from the division chances, being 0-3 in the division and 3 games behind the leader. On the other hand, for the Baltimore Ravens, a win does not lock their chances in at the division title, but certainly does increase them nicely. And a loss, kind of resets the division stakes there for the Baltimore Ravens, who had, a 2-game lead, so to speak, heading into last Sunday's loss to the Browns. It would kind of reset the North there and make it wide open yet again as the back half of the season gets under a roll. For Thursday's matchup, T. Higgins for the Cincinnati Bengals is listed as questionable, I still think. To me, it's looking like he's doubtful. I do not think he practiced on Monday. He's dealing with a hamstring injury. He did not play Week 10 against the Houston Texans. And then for the Ravens side of the ball, Ravens here, Marlon Humphrey listed as questionable on a short turnaround. I'm thinking he's going to be inactive. We will see. He did roll his ankle in Sunday's loss to the Cleveland Browns. By the team, he's listed as day-to-day. But, with an ankle injury, especially on a tight turnaround, it's going to be close. We'll see how that progresses in the next couple of days here. And then Ronnie Stanley did leave the game with a knee injury. Did not look serious. I believe that he is listed as questionable as well. So we'll see if he's active, ready to go. That one, both of those, the defensive backs have already proven that they can shine and, be efficient. Rocky Sin, Darby, Brandon Stevens, on the back end, Geno Stone, Kyle Hamilton, all those guys have been playing well as a defensive back unit before Marlon Humphrey came back. So hopefully, that one I'm less concerned with them hopefully be able to, continue that trend if Humphrey is out. And then on that offensive line, Ronnie Stanley has been struggling this year. So whoever they get to come in and start at left tackle, if Stanley is out, I do not think is as big as an impactor in terms of loss of production. But however, we will see. Hopefully I don't need to eat my words on that one against, that Bengals defensive front. Trey Hendrickson, he's obviously very solid. guy there. But that Ravens offense so far this year, in total yards, they're ranked 9th at 376, first in rushing yards at 155, 5th in points per game at 27, and 6th in third down percentage at 44% on the offensive side of the ball. And then for that Bengals offense, they have been struggling middle to worse of the pack in terms of offensive productions. 22nd in yards at 320 per game, 32nd in rushing yards at just under 75, and then 20th in points at 20.2, and 20th in third down percent success rate at 37%. So that Bengals offense been below average the entire season. Definitely something that most people probably did not see coming. I definitely did not. With the likes of Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, Mixon's very solid. But we will definitely take it as Ravens fans here. And then on the defensive side of the ball, some stuff that we're looking at. Ravens defense, definitely, I wouldn't say had a lapse really against the Cleveland Browns. Still performed somewhat solid, struggled on third down, like I said. But still played pretty solid. They're still ranked very high in most categories. Third in yards allowed per game at 305. 11th in rush yards allowed per game at just over 100. Still first in points allowed at just 15.7. And then 10th in third down percentage at 36%. On the flip side of that, the Cincinnati Bengals defense is pretty bad so far this season. They are ranked 30th in yards allowed at a tenth of a yard under 400, 30th in rush yards allowed at 136 per game, 16th, however, in points allowed at 21.3, and 26th at third down percentage allowed at 43%. So on paper, the Ravens, statistically, offensive stats versus defensive stats, should have this game in a lock. However, this is the NFL. This is the AFC North. Nothing is a lock. As us Ravens fans have already seen so far this year, the Browns game, that one, doesn't hit as hard, of a loss. Obviously still sucks, but, we've beaten ourselves with the Steelers. We've beaten ourselves against the Colts, any given Sunday. And that blunders can still happen, bad plays, this and this and this all come into an effect. Can lead to L's. Need to keep our head on straight. But my 3 Ravens keys to success for this week to increase their chances of winning as much as possible on Thursday Night Football. Ravens fans, definitely take note here. Last week, my two of my 3 key points. The Ravens did not do well and, ended up losing the game to the Cleveland Browns. So, this week's keys to success, though, keeping Burrow, I don't know how to word it the best. I'm going to just say keep Burrow confused. Do not let, Joe Burrow find a rhythm, so to speak. Throw as many different coverage looks as we can at him. Send pressure to him. Do not let Joe Burrow get locked in, especially on, his favorite target, Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is a guy who's eaten up the Ravens a couple times in the past few years. Keep Burrow, do not let him get comfortable. Make him make good throws. That's going to help us out. If he gets in a rhythm, we know Joe Burrow can be one of the best quarterbacks in the league, especially throwing the ball, passing, so definitely important to keep Joe Burrow contained best as possible. And, don't let him get the easy throws to get into rhythm, which, my second key point for the Ravens this week is going to be running the ball. Bengals defense is 30th in rushing yards allowed per game. Baltimore Ravens offense is first in rushing yards per game. First versus 30th should be attacked all day long with all of our good backs. Gus Edwards needs to get a plethora of carries. Keaton Mitchell needs to continue to get touches. And then when those two guys are tired, or if they get a series of, big chunks, Justice Hill is in there for relief. Gus and Keaton Mitchell, on top of Lamar Jackson, obviously he's going to get his time. He's going to get his rushes when they come. But running the ball, attacking that Bengals defense who has struggled with the run the entire year. Last week, they just gave up 150 yards to Devin Singletary in one game. They need to be attacked. I know we have the weapons on offense. Use the weapons. Use Odell. Use Zay Flowers. Use Mark Andrews enough to spread that defense, to keep them hesitant from stacking the box, and then continue to run the ball. My third key point for the Baltimore Ravens in this Thursday night football matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals is going to be having the defensive backs stay solid. It's looking like Humphrey. My prediction is Humphrey does not play. If he does, that's great. Humphrey's been very good for the Baltimore Ravens so far this season in terms of coverage snaps compared to yards allowed and quarterback rating allowed when targeted. So Marlon Humphrey would definitely be beneficiary in this matchup. However, I think he will be out. This means our defensive backs need to lock it in and continue to play well like they have all season. The Bengals have been notorious for having large, stat lines from their wide receivers against us. So to speak, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins if he plays, which he's looking like he's doubtful as well. Even Tyler Boyd has eaten us up and been, kind of a pain in the butt for the Baltimore Ravens since his whole career, really. That one kind of combos into, getting Joe Burrow out of a rhythm. Defensive backs need to play strong, communicate. I would like to see Kyle Hamilton up in the box towards the line of scrimmage, like we've seen quite a few times this season. That has led to a lot of, beneficiaries for that Ravens defense. So that's pretty much all I have for this week's Ravens recap, as well as a Week 11 preview for the Baltimore Ravens. If you made this far, thank you all so much for listening. Like I said, please follow and share this podcast. Help the Wedge 52 Gridiron brand grow, and go Ravens.